Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Wembley in northwest London to Westminster in central London. This ride takes about an hour and you can do pretty much the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes, with a long stretch on the canal towpath. It takes around the same amount of time to get the tube for the same journey, which is 10 miles. If you enjoy this video or you find it useful, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I post new ones like it every week. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting right outside Wembley Central Station, and you want to head right down London Road, which runs to the southeast of the station. It runs along the railway tracks. The railway tracks are on the right hand side here. And I decided to start outside Wembley Central Station. I did do a previous video which was Wembley to somewhere else, and I actually started in Alperton, which is technically Wembley, but it's not really Wembley Central, is it? So this one is right in the middle of Wembley, and we're going to go right into the sort of centre of Westminster, and I'm quite pleased with this route. This first stretch here is on a low traffic neighbourhood, or as the London Borough of Brent calls them, a healthy neighbourhood, which is a nice name, and it's very quiet because all the through traffic has been removed. And when you get to the end of London Road, you are going to want to head down this little path that's to the right of the road. And I spent quite a lot of time looking for routes and stuff, and you'll often get paths like this at the end of streets in in developments that are built from this sort of era. I think it's Edwardian sort of era. But often they don't have good provision for cycling, but this one does. It has a separate little cycle track on the right hand side, and then pedestrians are supposed to be on the left. The demarcation is not great. I mean, it could do a different colour. The surface isn't brilliant either, but it really does get the job done, and it nicely allows us to cut through the bottom of these playing fields and around the side of this primary school here, and it takes us out onto Tockington Avenue. And this is actually part of the same low traffic neighbourhood. The low traffic neighbourhood is called the Tockington and Wembley Central Healthy Neighbourhood. And yeah, what we're doing at the moment really is we're heading southeast, and we're basically bypassing the Regent's Canal. A lot of this route will be on the Regent's Canal, and I will talk about the Regent's Canal. Well, sorry, it's actually the Grand Union Canal at this point, but you know, the canal. A lot of it is on the canal towpath, but I think it's best when there's an alternative to avoid it, because you know, it can sometimes be a bit narrow, and it's nice to see some of the other infrastructure and maybe take a slightly more direct route. And talking of infrastructure, you can see these planters that we're passing through. That's a filter, so that's one of the things that's keeping this road quiet. That doesn't let cars through, but it does let us cycle through it. So it makes these streets really nice and very calm, and it's a really nice place to cycle, I think, actually. There's quite a lot of parking, so you know, be careful. Someone could run out from behind a car, but it's not the end of the world. Now, when you get to the end of Tockington Avenue, there is that you basically just keep going straight on this. There's a wall, and you should be able to go to the left of the wall up a ramp. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it here because somebody has parked an SUV there, so I've had to go up these steps, which is no good for disabled cyclists or wheelchair users. Now you come out onto Point Place and you go right. It does have this little contraflow sort of lightly segregated cycle lane with the wands there, but we don't need to use that because we're going in this direction. And we go past Stonebridge Park Station. Now we're about to head on to basically a path next to the North Circular, and this is brand new, this little stretch here. The North Circular is, if you don't know, it's kind of the inner ring road in North London, and it's it does have sort of shared cycle paths alongside a lot of it. Most of it is absolutely terrible. You're basically just cycling on the pavement. This bit is really nice. I'm really impressed with it. It's the council's done a great job here. It could have been slightly better designed. They could have used sort of tarmac, different coloured tarmac to demarcate it to stop people walking on the cycle path and stick to the pedestrian side. But it's alright, and it leads us to this actually quite impressive cycle bridge over the North Circular. We're not staying on the North Circular for too long, don't worry, it's not a particularly nice place to cycle alongside most of it. Now, there used to be, if you were watching closely there at the different coloured tarmac, there used to be a path straight ahead, but obviously there's a building site going on here, so that doesn't exist anymore. But you can go down this here. I would say go dead slow, because it's quite narrow and it's used by pedestrians as well. And then we head out onto here, and you can see this sign, this blue sign. It has a line, and then it has a bike on one side and pedestrians on the other. And if you look carefully at the ground, you can see there's slightly different coloured tarmac. So we're actually on a kind of a segregated cycle track here. You saw those cycle symbols on the ground. Technically, to the right of that line on the ground is the pedestrian zone, and to the left is cycles. In practice, people will wander into the path, the cycle bit, and the design is not fantastic. It gives up at side roads. You can see we had to wait for this signalled crossing, and I actually dismounted here because there was a cyclist dismount sign, and also these plants could do with the trim. They're blocking half the path, but it is better than you get on most A roads around the UK. So fair play that it exists, and it forms a very useful link. What we're basically doing now is we're heading towards the Grand Union Canal, and we want to get to the canal, and that's going to take us most of the way into central London, where we'll come off it again. I quite like the way that the cycle path bypasses the bus stop there. I think the design flaws of this path are forgivable because the pavement is so low footfall, but it's not ideal. But as I say, useful link. Now, don't miss it on the left here. There's a sign going down to the Grand Union Canal, and we're heading down here. And I don't know how you feel about cycling along the canal. Some of it, there's lots of different sections of this canal in London. It stretches all the way from, the Docklands right out west. I mean, you can ride it all the way up to Birmingham if you want, and beyond, really. But I'd say this bit of the canal is actually all right to cycle on as a cycle path. You can see it's pretty wide, and it also goes through kind of an industrial estate area. So unlike, say, if you're used to cycling along the canal in Hackney or in Camden maybe, or perhaps around like Little Venice, particularly on a sunny day like this, it was absolutely blazing sunshine, although it is a weekday, not a weekend. You'll encounter a lot of people walking, and the canal can be not a great place to cycle it somewhere, and also often in those parts of London, those parts of the city, you'll have a lot of alternatives like Hackney, Camden. Those are great boroughs for cycling. They're kind of in London boroughs. They've got good lanes, LTNs and stuff. But here this is a crucial link, and there's not really a good alternative way to do the route that we're doing while staying off the main roads or staying on segregated cycle tracks. This is really the best shout you're going to get. So I'm leading us down here, but the main thing to remember is that this is shared with pedestrians. So don't ride like a maniac, and it can get narrow at different points. Sometimes it's sometimes it's alright, sometimes it's narrow. It's a little bit wider than it looks in the video. By the way, just so these bridges that we're passing under, that on the left and also the right is Wilson Substation, sort of an electricity infrastructure thing. And I had to look up what those bridges were. Those have got loads of heavy-duty electricity cables in them. Kind of interesting if you'd ever wondered what they were. And we're going under the Dudding Hill railway line here. That was that big brick railway bridge. And that line is a line that is occasionally used by freight. And there's actually a proposal to turn it into a West London orbital, which would be really to add it to the London Overground as a passenger service, reinstate a passenger service on it. That'd be really great, I think, really fantastic. Probably not going to happen as there isn't really any cash. There's a lot of railway bridges over this canal, and it actually took me a while to do this video because I was basically going and looking up what all of them were. So I've tried to, mainly to give myself something to talk about while we go on the canal, I've tried to identify pretty much everything that passes over our heads as we go down here. Now, you might have noticed that I've dismounted here because it did say dismount. This is one thing that you get about the canal. Often there is remedial works or construction work. I think in this case it's a temporary bridge to do with the construction project. It might be to do with HS2. I did see a sign saying that a part of the canal was closed due to works because of HS2. Not 100% sure about that though, so if anybody in the comments knows, then please do fill me in. But I often get quite annoyed when stuff's disrupted when I try to shoot a video, because I like to show you the video as it in its ideal form. But I think it's important to keep stuff like this in because actually by the way, we just passed under a couple of London Overground lines there. You actually could have seen a London Overground train over there. But I do like to leave stuff like that in because actually that's quite a typical experience of cycling down the Regent's Canal. Occasionally bits of it will be bypassed or have bits where you have to dismount. So that's one of the disadvantages of the route. But it's not the end of the world. That's the only work that was going on when I cycled this one. And yeah, it's actually pretty nice here. It's actually quite wide. You can see the verge is quite well kept. Unlike that cycle lane we had earlier, the plants aren't like creeping out and taking up half the path. Thank you to the Canal and River Trust for doing a good job. Yeah, and you can see it's an absolutely gorgeous day. And yeah, there's plenty of space for us to pass, multiple people and pass other cyclists. Obviously, do be careful. And, as I always say, do be courteous and, be cautious and just enjoy the ride because it's a really, really nice way. And what I was most surprised by when I first came out here actually was and also as you go even further west, is the extent to which there is actually still quite a lot of light industry along the canal. There's quite a lot of bakeries, I think is a big one, food factories, things that need to supply the metropolis. So a lot of it that needs to be close in, a lot of it is around here. By the way, we just passed under the Scrubs Lane Bridge, which is the lane that goes to Wormwood Scrubs. So that's actually one of the reasons that I have included those bridges. Is because it helps you get your bearings. So Wormwood Scrubs is kind of on the way northwest of like Notting Hill, Portobello Road kind of area. So we are actually getting into somewhere that's now recognisably nearly inner London. On the right here, by the way, is the you can't see it, but you saw that bench we just went past. If you like looking at trains, you could stand on that bench and have a good look at the mouth of the Great Western Main Line, because that's all coming into Paddington there, and you'll see a lot of trains. I think the Old Oak Common railway depot is on the right as well, which is where they currently look after a lot of the Hitachi, the Class 802 sort of Great Western Railway fleet there, the stuff that goes down to Cornwall and things like that. They'll also be putting a new sort of station here for HS2 soon. So, yeah, and you can see we're very much in like traditional ye olde canal territory. I remember I took a day off once and walked down here, and it's really lovely, isn't it? I took a day off and walked down here, and I saw a couple of guys on a barge selling fuel. Like coal and gas and stuff. One guy, I think he was wearing a top hat, and they were basically cruising very, very slowly and selling it to boats as they passed. There's an interesting thing coming up here, which is what I refer to as the massive hill before the big Sainsbury's. And I just wouldn't try and cycle up here. Even if you think you can do it, you're going to have to dismount at the top. It's kind of dangerous to cycle up and over it. Just dismount for it and walk up and save yourself the hassle, and then dismount. And if you need to get your shopping done, that's one guy who didn't dismount, he was going quite quick. I wouldn't ride like that here, probably not a good idea. There's a massive Sainsbury's here, so yeah, you can get your shopping done if you've got big enough panniers, or a trolley as one guy had. It starts to get a little bit more metropolitan as we come in. We're actually passing under Ladbroke Grove Bridge, which you probably recognise the name of the road from the tube station. That's a sort of an in London tube station. So we've made really, really quick progress, it's really quite nice around here. Do be careful as you go through the construction work in the tunnels, because it obviously narrows the path a little bit. But you can kind of see there's plenty of space. And anybody who's used to East London, who's used to Camden, cycling on the canals down there, you can see it's a very different experience in the west. I think it feels maybe like the canal's less well used. There's in Hackney you'll run sort of nice coffee shops along the canal. There isn't really much of that around here, and that's just kind of a shame, because like it's nice. By the way, I love these terraces on the left. They look really cool, don't they? It's really rare that you'd see that style of architecture right up against the water. In a way, it's a bit of a shame, because that stuff's quite nice. But in a way, it is quite handy for us, because it means that there's not as many people just hanging out on the canal. I did come down here during lockdown once and did almost this exact route. I shot an earlier video. It was a cold day, but it was sort of full lockdown, the time when everybody was just going for walks, and it was a weekend. And there were people, but it wasn't absolutely rammed. I don't think it ever gets absolutely plastered rammed here. And especially during commuting hours, you'll definitely be fine if you have sort of normal office job commuting hours. By the way, I've tried to note the way you can access the canal. I haven't got all of them, because you can really just get to it mostly whenever it crosses a bridge. So if you're coming from somewhere else, you can get onto the canal and do half of this route or whatever. Pretty much, just look on a map basically. But yeah, there's a nice gardens to the right there. So if if you're doing this for fun and you want to bring a picnic or something like that, that's a nice place to go. The Meanwhile Gardens. Well, there are some more gardens coming up in a second. We're fairly close to the halfway point of the ride now. Actually, we've made good progress, and you might note that we haven't really sort of come on any cars, and it's been pretty wide the whole way. We've not really had any problems. We've not really got stuck behind anyone. There's been a couple of inconveniences on the canal. There's that very steep bridge, but not really. And this above us is the Westway. And oh my god, this sort of stuff was supposed to be built all over London under the Ringways plan, and it would basically level most of Zone 2. And yeah, thank god that didn't happen, because that would have been an absolute disaster. Provides us a bit of shade on the canal. It's really quite strange. It's almost like a sort of alien ship parked on top of the canal. But yeah, that's part of that's a massive motorway up there, and I think it's a slightly pointless stretch of motorway, even if you want more traffic capacity, because all it does is just sort of focus this like very high capacity road, sort of like a machine gun pointed at the head of London, and it just sends loads and loads of traffic onto the Euston Road, basically into inner London, onto smaller roads that can't accommodate it. So, I think there's definitely a strong case for pulling that down. Maybe let me know in the comments. So the canal towpath, you can't, when you reach that gate, it's pretty obvious you can't cycle any further, so you have to turn into here. There's Mary Magdalene Gardens, named for that church in front of us, and you can see that you cycle on the left and it's for pedestrians on the right, so stick to your side. And that's actually it. That's actually us for the canal today. There's no more canal, and I'm very impressed that I managed to find stuff to talk about for the entire section of that route, because there certainly weren't any directions. So yeah, thank you for putting up with my blabbering there. Now we're heading out onto Delamere Terrace. This is a controversial one. You can see on the lamppost just there's a little blue sticker if you pause it, and it is a cycle route, a designated cycle route. It doesn't technically have a sign on the pavement here that says that the pavement is shared use, so I don't think you're technically allowed to cycle on the pavement here, but it is very wide. If you feel uncomfortable about cycling on it, you can dismount, but as you can see, absolutely everybody goes on it, because you can't cycle on the towpath, and also the road is one way. I think nobody seems to really be bothered by it. There were actually plans to put a shared use sign up there, but they seem to have got lost in the mists of Westminster Council somewhere, so I don't know what happened there. Now you turn off onto Blomfield Villas, and this is sort of a mini low traffic neighbourhood. There's not really any through traffic here, so you're not going to run into any cars, and then you have to dismount because there's no drop curb here, but you do see there is a shared use sign up here, so you're allowed to cycle on this bit of pavement. I don't know why they've put one there and not back on Blomfield Terrace. And then use the crossing, there's a double crossing, wait for the green man here, and that above us is our old friend the Westway. Now look very, very carefully before you get onto this road. And this may look a bit scary. Normally I don't suggest that people cycle on painted cycle lanes. This one is actually pretty good for a painted lane. You can see it's very, very wide. I don't know why they haven't added light segregation to this. Just a few ones would make a big difference, but it does lead into this junction here, which is actually probably the worst bit of the route in terms of protection. So that was fine going through it, but if it's busier, you basically have to be able to navigate a junction there, so that's a problem. And we're still in this painted cycle lane here. It's a very wide painted cycle lane that could do with some, some orcas or little plastic nodules or something, just to keep the traffic out. So we are now coming up onto a segregated lane on Westbourne Terrace, and this is actually the most sadly disappointing bit of the route. It should be really good, because it is, it's a TfL flagship scheme from back when Boris Johnson was in charge. You see there's a good segregated lane here. Unfortunately, the traffic lights are basically broken for cycles, so you have to be very careful merging here. And then this red light here, so I normally cut out traffic light weights, but I just wanted to leave it in. I've put it on like 600% speed just to show you how long you have to wait for if you do it. I think this is supposed to have a sensor which sort of tells the lights when there's a bike waiting, but every time I've been down here for like 3 months, it just doesn't trigger. So you'll see the traffic lights go on multiple rounds of the program. So that one on the left is already gone. It's going to go again in a minute. Basically, everybody gets to go except us, and as far as I could tell, this never turns green. So you're basically going to have to run a red light here. Just look carefully and wait for a gap in the traffic and treat it as if there's no traffic light there. You know, I don't know what else you can do there. That was very frustrating because I never want to run a red light, especially in a video. This bit does work, so I'm waiting here for the green light, and yeah, this bit also works too. But that whole section really needs a rethink, I think. It's a shame because the lane's really good, but it really needs to be redone. There's far too many. It's like 100 meters, and it should take sort of 15 seconds to cycle through. And even if the lights were working, you could wait at like 4 lights in that short space of time, and they don't work, and you can end up waiting there for like 10 minutes if you didn't realise that it's broken. Now we've headed into Hyde Park here, and while I was sort of complaining about those lights, I forgot to mention that the lights turning into Hyde Park, there's actually sort of a turning lane, so make sure you pay attention to the right light as you go into there. Don't sort of see the straight on light and then turn across traffic. You basically just wait for the green light that allows you to go into Hyde Park. And there's this really very nice cycle lane here. That's a mobile COVID testing site on the left there. It's quite a nice idyllic spot to have something stuck up your nose. And yeah, this is a segregated lane more or less. They've actually closed this road to general traffic, and then this lane here is painted on. It's very, very nice. There's some great lanes around here. Normally, by the way, you turn into Hyde Park here. Normally, you'd have an option of going through the park right or taking the new lane along Park Lane, but it's actually closed going through the park at the moment for cycles. But that doesn't matter because I'd actually recommend taking the Park Lane anyway for a couple of reasons. The path in the park has little mini speed bumps on. The Royal Parks is a very strange authority. They run parks, but they don't seem to really like cycling. So they actually put in a load of mini speed bumps there, which are quite dangerous, I think. And that lane actually runs to the right. You can just see it beyond the trees there. But TfL, fortunately, has come to the rescue, and they've put this great sort of semi-segregated cycle lane along Park Lane. And I think it's really good. It was one of the first ones that they did pretty much overnight at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And I hope it stays, actually. I hope it's permanent. There's a short section here which is shared with pedestrians, but it goes back onto the main lane. It's just a one scheme, but this lane is so wide that obviously it could accommodate a huge amount of space. They've done the bus stops very nicely too. It's almost like a permanent scheme, actually. In fact, I think those bus stops were originally done with temporary materials, but they seem to have been kind of made semi-permanent. That a lot of that stonework looks like a real curb that someone's actually dug and excavated to put in. I don't know, but yeah, you can see this is a great ride. There's nothing in the way. It's pretty well used, certainly at commuting hours. I mean, this is the middle of the day, but yeah, takes you along the highway, and you don't have to contend with pedestrians walking in all those little speed bumps that the Royal Park puts in to help you break your neck. So what we're doing here is we're going to head through the arch here. Now, this bit baffles me. It used to be that bikes would go through one arch and pedestrians would go through the other arch. It was nicely separated. Now they've changed it so that everyone goes through both arches. It's like a shared space. I think generally as a rule it's better to keep bikes and pedestrians separate where you can, especially in tight spaces like an arch. At rush hour it can be absolute chaos going through that little bit coming out of the park, and I don't know if anyone's been hurt or anything like that, but it seems to me a retrograde step to merge all the pedestrians and cycles in. Now we're heading on down Constitution Hill here. Now this is great, this is really nice. There is a slight design flaw though, unfortunately, which is that this is sort of owned by like the Crown Estate and the Royal Parks, and they're very sort of bit prissy about putting stuff that looks like it's for cyclers, and unfortunately there's not really much demarcating this as a cycle track, so you tend to get families of 8 people holding hands across the cycle lane, as we just passed. And there's also no gap in the railing, so if you take the wrong side of the railing, it's pedestrians on the left and cycles on the right. If you go on the wrong side there, you're stuck for the whole thing. So that could be sorted out. We're going through these sort of semi-segregated lanes. That's Buckingham Palace on the right there. Interesting fact about those poles, they are actually removable for state occasions because the Crown Estate didn't like the idea of having sort of permanent cycle infrastructure there. So, if they want to ride a carriage down there, you don't have these unsightly curbs, which they think are unsightly. This is Birdcage Walk, and yeah, similar story here. Those are sort of removable ones. It's quite limited segregation. On most roads you think, oh, though you need more ones than that, those gaps are too big, but actually this is such a low traffic road anyway, and the median strip there sort of separating us from the traffic is so wide. I think it works really well. This is a good time to say, by the way, that if you want to find a map of this route, then there'll be a link in the description below the video on YouTube. So yeah, you can find it, and you can download a GPS file there, because people always ask me about that, so I always forget to mention it. Now, if you know central London well at all, you'll know that we're coming up to our final destination, to Parliament Square. Make sure you wait at the lights here, and you go through these security barriers here, which are there to, I think, prevent vehicle attacks, and this very nicely done protected cycle lane going into Parliament Square. And yeah, that keeps us safe from all that traffic that's on the right, which you wouldn't want to mix with. It used to be absolute nightmare to cycle in Parliament Square before this. The lights can be a little bit slow here, but that's to keep you basically separate. And yeah, that's Big Ben ahead of us, for anybody who doesn't know that it's been shrouded in scaffolding for a few years. Now, yeah, we're here. This is it. This is Park Square. You can actually normally cycle on this little bit here, but they've put up railings because the single issue protesters are out and about. Anyway, thank you very much for watching that, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I do post new ones like it every week, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you.